Welcome back to another episode of the Muscle Room Podcast. We are here at the beautiful, brand new Nassau County Police Department training facility, or the Academy and Intelligence Center. We are joined here with Tim Jaccard, captain of the Nassau County Police Department Emergency Ambulance Bureau.
Correct.
And also the coordinator for the Baby Safe Haven Foundation.
Yes.
Which we're going to get into because that's what the whole podcast is going to be about.
Right.
And Tim, let me first be to say, you look fantastic in the uniform. Got a lot of stars on your left-hand side.
40 years.
40 years of service with Nassau County. That's unbelievable. I know a lot of those of us in the emergency services field can't do 40 years. I'm sure you've had a very long career, and we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that you've seen. I do want to do a little disclaimer before we start this. The topic that we're going to be discussing today and some of the stories that we're going to be discussing today are graphic when it comes to the dealing with little children, babies to be exact. Of course, we don't want anyone turning away from the podcast, but we do want to let them at least know that this is going to be a pretty serious podcast. Some of our podcasts are a little bit more on the lighter side, and then some of them, of course, are on the serious side. And this one is definitely going to be more on the serious side. So for those who are listening or watching, just, be aware that this is going to be one of those episodes where it's going to be sometimes a little tough to hear some of these stories.
Correct.
So, Tim, with that being said, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into EMS to begin with.
I used to own flower shops. Had two flower shops at the time, and I also had greenhouses out on Wellwood Avenue. And my degree was originally in horticulture, and I was a teacher at the Farmingdale College, and I taught horticultural designs and things like that. And I volunteered with the Warrenville Fire Department and fell in love with EMS. I was on the ambulance. I did get my certification before I even went to the police department. Into the fire department. And then I continually did that for 5 years. When I was asked to join the police department and work and become a police medic for the police department, which I did. And I worked the night shifts there so that I can still operate my flower shops. But the flower shops I had there was originally, I had 14 full-time employees working for me there. So I didn't really have to worry about what had to get done. I just made sure that the operation went very well.
And what year was that? What year did you actually get involved in EMS?
EMS was 1969.
Okay. 1969, and that was with the Volunteer Fire Department with Wantagh. Did 5 years in Wantagh.
Right.
And then when you say you got asked to join EAB, what do you exactly mean by that? Was there no test at the time?
Yeah, I had to go through the academy.
Okay.
And I did. But they asked me because they knew about me, and they knew I was a good leader, basically. Now, and that's important.
What's interesting for those who are watching or listening, especially across the United States, Nassau County the police department runs an emergency ambulance bureau.
Right.
So if you're in Nassau County, if the fire department is not the primary 911, the police department is, and they provide an ambulance. And that's pretty unusual for most of the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what the statistics are or the numbers, I should say. Roughly how many ambulances are working throughout the county?
We have 42 ambulances.
42 ambulances. Wow. And Nassau County, for the most know, is one of the most populated counties in the country.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people. And you provide emergency service for those people.
Yeah, well, my main post was Hempstead. I did Hempstead, Garden City, Albertson, and the areas all around there.
Pretty busy areas.
Yeah. The police department, the Hempstead Police Department worked very close with me. And half the time, I would say 3/4 of the time, I was never out of that town.
Yeah.
And, I've been involved in an incredible amount of violence that you can imagine.
Yeah.
On a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday, I was good for at least one stabbing and a shooting.
Yeah. Well, Hempstead is a very tough area.
Yeah, yeah. I got shot at 3 times,
Wow.
and I got slashed and got 85 stitches in my arm here.
Wow.
So it was not a it was a and we were told 100 Terrace Avenue, you do not enter the building until you have a backup with you. So
You've had a very long career. I'm sure you have story after story after story. But what we want to specifically talk about during this podcast is the baby safe haven.
Okay, all right. I've delivered over 300 babies since I established the safe haven program here, and I've rescued 5,122 babies alive.
Wow.
And well, not just me, but I have 162 volunteers that are all most police medics, and we do have a lot, and that's the key to it. Now, back in 1969, as I explained to you, I received a call. I was sitting in Hempstead, where I normally am, and in front of the courthouse. I was literally looking out my window, seeing the front door of the courthouse there. And that's when I got the call, 2350, baby not breathing. And I ran into the main lobby's ladies' room, and I found a little baby boy drowned in the toilet bowl with a placenta laying on top of him. And I tried to save his life and did the normal FEMA injection needle to pump medication into him. And he was just gone and could not save his life. But when I ran in there, I noticed a picture on the wall of a court officer who was a deacon. And above his picture was this little tiny cross, which is unusual in a courthouse. And after the pronouncement, I went back out. 2 weeks from the day that I had that call, I get another call, 2350, baby not breathing. I respond to Albertson, and I find a little baby girl wrapped up in a plastic bag, asphyxiated, and there was nothing I could do. And I pronounced that child also. But right across the street from where I found that baby was a church, and it's called St. Aidan's. My wife's name is Aiden, and so that was quite unique. And went back out, did what I had to do, and 2 weeks to the day again, I get a call, 2350, baby not breathing, Bedell Street in Hempstead. I get to the same scene, and I find another little baby boy buried in a backyard that was unearthed by a dog, with a cross laying on the pile of dirt, and it was all rusted. And I said, I can't believe this, and made the pronouncement. And 2 weeks to the day, again, I respond on overtime. I was working Lawrence Cedarhurst when a call came in, baby not breathing, and I got the call again. So I responded to that particular call, and I found a little baby boy wrapped up in a bag inside a recycling bin. And when I went down and I picked the baby up, the church chimes at 12 o'clock noon. That's when I arrived at the scene, and I found a little baby boy, and I pronounced him. And that's when I said to myself, what do you want me to do? So from the time I found baby Angelica, that's the name we named the baby in the courthouse, in a 10-month period, we had 16 babies here locally that were abandoned and murdered. And that's when I sat down, went to a place called the library. You know, the books used to be on the shelves back then. And I discovered through newspaper articles that we had 16 babies, which I knew. Houston, Texas had 13 babies, and that was the governor there was George W. Bush. He was the governor at the time before he became president. And then after that, I wound up working and made a phone call to the governor's office and said that I tried to explain to him what I was trying to do. And Susan Hunt was his secretary. She says, I am sure that the governor will speak with you. So Susan says, I'm sure he went into his office and he says, yes, I would like to have a conversation with him. So I got a ticket and I flew to Austin, Texas, and I presented what my bill was, which I wrote in the library, and explained it to him. He goes, I like this idea. This can really work. And he says, I promise you. And I kept calling him governor. He said, no. You traveled here to do something that nobody else could do. And you call me George. So that's the way it went off. And I presented the bill, and I went back and met him 6 more times. And by the way, if you go to Texas and you're invited to eat steak, go hungry. They give you a half a cow when you get there.
That's my type of steak.
So he says, Tim, he says, I like this bill. I said, George, I'm sure it's going to work. And he says, the only thing I want you to do is change the name of the bill. It was called the Infant Abandonment Protection Act, is what I had labeled as. And he says, I want you to change it to the Baby Moses bill. Now, Moses was abandoned in biblical time down the Nile River. And I looked at George and I said, George, I don't care if you call it the Kermit the Frog bill. If you're willing to sign it, I'll name it anything you want. So the first bill that I got passed was the Baby Moses bill, and that was in Texas. And then I had to go across the entire country, and it took me 10 years to get all 50 states. One of the problems I ran into, which I didn't expect, was I tried to get bills passed in Colorado and heavy areas of the tribal nations. And the tribal leaders would not sign off on the bills. So that's why I couldn't get them passed in those particular states. So we had a powwow, and they do have a powwow like they would normally have. And the pipes that they smoke are pretty funky, if you get the drift.
Yeah, I get what you're throwing down.
Whoa! So we came up with an agreement that all the bills, if we get a child from an Indian reservation, and he has 10% or more Indian blood, even if it's not on the reservation, the Indian Child Welfare Association for the federal government takes custody of the baby, and that baby is then placed within the tribal nations themselves.
What exactly did the bills themselves have within them?
It was, you had, back when I first started it, you had 5 days to relinquish a baby at a hospital, police, or fire station. And then I got the bill amended, and it has 30 days. Most of the states, I would say 30 of the states, all have 30 days or more. The only place that has a high number is Nebraska. They have 1 year to relinquish, up to 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah,
so essentially, a woman gives birth to a child.
Correct.
They have up to 30 days for most states to then go to a police station, fire station, or a hospital.
Or a doctor's office, any medical
facility. Yeah. Drop the baby off, no questions asked.
Walk away.
And walk away.
Yeah.
And you were the one who was able to get that started.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why they call me the father of Safe Haven.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've told me some really incredible stories on the phone when we were setting up these interviews. So I want to dive deeper into it. I want to dive deeper into really what the organization has done since its inception. Well,
originally when I started the program, it was, my organization is called the is called the AMT, Children of Hope Infant Burial Foundation. I bury babies that are murdered. And I have one this coming Saturday that we're having a mass at St. William the Abbot at 9:30 in the morning. And then we bury the baby at Holy Rood. Now I have the firefighters, the Nassau County Blue Knights, and Patriots. Those are all the motorcycle groups that are all part of my group, and they do the escorts. When we normally have a baby that has to be buried, we have around 50 to 75 motorcycles do the escort for the hearse. and that is something that is just beautiful to see. I mean, how can you say a funeral is beautiful? 3 weeks ago, I had a call from Winthrop Hospital. Now it's NYU Langone, and the Justin, the director there, says, "I need you to see if you can help us out. The pandemic has caused a lot of problems. We have 6 babies that were born alive with a birth certificate and a death certificate because they all died during COVID." And I said, yes, I took custody of all 6 of those children. And we set it up, and we had the mass and everything set up. I had the Blue Knights, the firefighters, all the different groups, with 2 pallbearers for each one of the babies. And we went in, and we had well over 300 plus people in church when we walked down the aisle with the 6 babies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you get these bills passed. You go throughout the entire country, essentially to all 50 states, dealing with 50 different governors.
Yeah.
10 years later, you say, all right, finally, I'm done. No, you're not done, because then you decide to start your own organization. Or was the organization?
I had the organization first.
So the organization came first, and then you went throughout all 50 states.
Yeah, but the organization, when I first established it, was to take care of the children that were murdered and give them a dignified burial.
And now, is that only here in New York, or do you go to other states to do that as well?
I don't do the burials in other states, but I do travel all over the country doing in-service training at police academies and, firehouses.
Yeah. So 10 years, 50 states, and then you say, well,
then I founded what is known as the National Safe Haven Alliance in Washington, D.C., and that encompasses all 50 states. And we compare what's good in the bills and what should be changed in the bills, and that type of situation. And one of the other bills that I passed, which at that time Governor Cuomo was here, and he vetoed my bill, because the bill was, if a child is 24 weeks or older, they must get a birth, what is known as a fetal death certificate, and be announced that is considered a licensed thing. And I did get it passed, and Governor Cuomo vetoed it. I had to go back up to Albany, and I met with all the legislators in the LOB building, and they all agreed that this is a good thing to have. And the reason why is because of Planned Parenthood. They were heavily sponsoring Cuomo at the time, financially, for donations. And I got it passed, and it became law that if 24 weeks or older, you get a fetal death certificate.
Do you track how many children a year are given up to the police? What are the numbers?
5,122 babies.
Each year, roughly.
Oh, each year?
Yeah.
It depends on what area you're in. Mm-hmm. Here, we are over 167 babies that have been relinquished safely.
And nationally, it's 5,000.
The 5,122 babies.
And that was in 2022?
That's and through this year.
Through that year.
Yeah.
Wow. So because of what you did, over 5,000 children were saved.
Oh, yeah. I'm godfather to 6 of those children.
Like an actual godfather?
I'm an actual godfather.
How'd that come about?
The parents asked me, would you please be a godfather to my daughter? Now, Caitlin McCann is my most famous one. She's 22 years old now. She was my first child that I delivered, and she calls me Uncle Tim, and now she's doing beautifully.
How does it feel to know that you saved over 5,000 lives?
Not just myself. I mean,
you're right. I mean, your staff, but I mean, it's because of you.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Feels great.
And do you equate it all to this other, like we don't try to get religious at all, but God essentially was giving you all these signs.
That's how I feel about it. and it's been really interesting.
Yeah.
To be dealing and doing with this. One of the interesting calls I had, which I think everyone around here can relate to, was beginning of April this year. I got a phone call from the crisis center, and it was a woman on the phone, and she would not talk to anybody but me. And I said, well, put her on. So they transferred the call over to my office, and I had her on the phone. She says, I don't know if you remember me. 6 years ago, you picked me up in Pennsylvania and drove me to some place in Wantor, which is my safe house. And you delivered my daughter in the back bedroom of the safe house. And I said, Cindy, I remember you. And she says, I said, are you okay now? She says, no, I need help. I'm in labor, and I'm not going to a hospital. I don't want to know if you can help me. I said, well, it's over 3 hours for me to get to you, and you're going to give birth before I get there. She said, I'm not going to any hospital. I said, I understand that. I said, I'll tell you what. My sister-in-law lives in Clifton, New Jersey, right on the border of Pennsylvania. It's about an hour and 15 minutes away from where you are. And I can get there in about the same time. And I'll meet you at my sister-in-law's house. So she pulled into the house and into the driveway. We were there about 15 minutes before she arrived. And she calls me on the phone, says, I need you now. I said, okay. And I have an emergency delivery kit with me all the time. And I wound up delivering another little baby girl underneath the steering wheel in the front of her car.
Oh, man.
And my wife's standing next to me. So I clamped the cord, cut it, hand the baby to my wife. My wife brings the baby into the house. And this was in September that this was happening. So it was pretty cool out. And no, April. Sorry. The other September one was a different one. That's a while too. And so I finished delivering the placenta, got her out of the car, brought her into the house, and my sister-in-law helped her take a shower, and I went out and cleaned the car up because it was a mess.
Could only imagine.
And she comes out, and I said, listen, I really want you to spend the night. She says, I can't. I said, really, you got to stay. I want to monitor you. And you have no tears, I have a special technique that I use when, in order to try to eliminate the episiotomies that would occur, on an uncysted tears that you would get. And I said, please. She says, I've got to get home. My neighbor is watching my son. She had another baby, and a little baby boy, and he was being watched by the neighbor. So I said, okay. So she got in her car, and she drove away. And here we are holding the baby in our hands.
Wow. And then what did you do with the baby?
Child Protective Services has to take custody of the babies. That's under all the laws.
Yeah.
And they have an assigned adoption agency that the DPS, contract with. And the babies are placed in foster adoptive homes for 90 days or a little bit longer. And once the babies are born, this couple that is fostering that child, knowing that the mother comes back, the child is going to go back to the mother. And but I would say 95% of the time, the mothers disappear and they never come back. So we had the baby, and we brought the baby to a hospital emergency room, and the baby was placed there, and that's what happens. And then I get subpoenaed into court all the time in regards to the termination of the mother's and the father's rights. Now, in New York State, I incorporated in the safe haven law a bill that was passed long time before I knew about it. And it was that if a father abandons a baby, the father's rights can be terminated in 30 days. The mothers take 90, sometimes 120 days. But the father's rights for abandonment terminates his rights right away. So it eases up the court proceedings when I go into court to testify.
How many babies have you delivered personally?
Over 300.
300.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that like a record?
I don't know, but I have the records on all of them.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. I know that do they still do this where if an ambulance delivers a baby, they put a stalk
Yes.
on the side of the
the fire department.
fire departments do that.
Yeah, we don't have them on the police department ambulance.
Yeah,
they won't let us do that.
You should just drive an ambulance that looks like a stork.
Yeah.
Because I mean, 300 babies.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you. So the whole time you're doing this, you're still a member of EAB with Nassau County.
Yeah.
How is the county working with you while you're going across the country to enact these laws to save all these children?
Very good question. That really is good.
That's why we have them.
Yeah. Yes. The commissioner, Dale, was my first commissioner when I was originally starting this thing. But what I do is I swap tours. So, for instance, we work a 4-hour. By the way, I was the president of the Medical Benevolent Association, and I'm the one that initiated the 12-hour tours. We wanted to keep up with the same thing as the nurses had in the emergency rooms, and 12-hour shifts. And at first, the guys were a little bit opposed to it. But then when they found out that you're going to work 3 days on and you get 4 days off, they grabbed that. They grabbed that really fast.
Yeah, it's a good schedule.
And I got that passed, and that's ever since it's been 12-hour tours.
Yeah,
it's been working really well.
And then when did you retire? I know you're back now, but when did you retired? How long ago?
5 years ago.
So you retire 5 years ago, and then what happens?
I was told that you can't go.
Explain that in further detail.
When I was working with Dale as my commissioner, what he did was he says, "We need you to stay here. We got to come up with an idea." I said, "Okay." And I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "Let me keep my office here at headquarters, and let me keep my guns registered here at headquarters, and also, if I need the police vehicles for the babies to be buried, I'm still be able to have that." And he said, "Well, I can't approve that." He said, "Let me call." He called Tom, the county executive, Tom Collada. Okay, and he turned around and he said, "What does he want? How much money does he want to get paid?" $1 a year.
Wow.
My retirement pension is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Why should I rape the county?"
Yeah.
To do something that I'm already doing. So Tom says, "Give him whatever the F he wants."
And that was it.
And that was it. So I got my office still at headquarters.
Yeah.
And I got the cars that I need and the vehicles I need for escorts. Now, when we bury a baby that's been murdered, we bury that child with full dignity, full honors. I have a group of women that I have wedding gowns that are donated to me all the time, and they cut them up and make them into baptismal gowns and tuxedos. So every baby is dressed in a tuxedo or a baptismal gown.
Wow.
And then they're laid to rest in the casket with dressed, and then we bring them to the church first. Now I've been to so many different churches. I just don't deal with St. William the Abbot. I deal with churches all over New York City. The most interesting one I had, and the most famous one I had, was I received a call from the detective in Brooklyn, and he says, "We have a baby that we just found in a garbage can, and can you come and give us a little hand and see what we have to do and to stabilize this situation here?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went to Brooklyn, and on the Williamsburg Bridge, they found the baby on the Brooklyn side in a garbage can, and they didn't have the placenta. So I said, "Well, first thing we got to do is see if we can find the placenta, see if it's in one of the garbage cans." And this was Jonathan. We named him Jonathan. And Matthew. We found another baby on the Manhattan side the same night.
Same night.
Same
Wow.
night. and they thought that they were twins originally. And when we went there and we took the baby out, after they did the autopsies, turned out as two separate cases.
Wow.
So I had one baby named Jonathan, another one named Matthew, Jonathan and Matthew. They were buried. So I decided, because Manhattan side, we should have the mass should be held at St. Patrick's Cathedral. So Cardinal O'Connor was the cardinal at the time, and I asked him. I went to his office and I told him what we had, and he goes, "Absolutely, we can have the St. Patrick's Cathedral for that." And so we set it all up, and I never in my life expected to see what showed up at that time. It was American Legion Hall where we used to meet. 500 motorcycles showed up.
Wow.
It was the largest escort I ever had. We had to get the state troopers involved in order to get through that.
I'm sure.
And then the state troopers contacted the transportation and the Bridge and Tunnel Authority. And when we came up to the bridge, to the tunnel going into Manhattan, they actually shut the bridge down. The tunnel down, so that all of the bikes and all of the hearse and everything involved. We had two hearses, and we went to St. Patrick's Cathedral with it. And then New York City did a flyover with their helicopter, and that was a beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What year was that?
That was in 1971.
1971. So it was about a few years after you started this
Yeah. I was already everything was going along.
Yeah.
Very smoothly.
Now you've mentioned that so over 5,000 lives have been saved.
5,122.
Do you know how many babies are lost each year statistically?
Throughout the country?
Mhm.
I don't have that figure, but I have New York.
Okay.
I have that encountered.
So what was like
167 babies we've had buried that were murdered.
And that's since
we started.
Since you started, 167.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just if you happen to know, or just out of curiosity, what state is the highest?
Death rates?
Yeah.
Georgia.
Yeah. Do you know why?
Poverty.
Okay.
It really is.
Man.
And that's the highest numbers of adoptions too.
Is in Georgia?
Is Georgia. Yeah. And then Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana is the next one.
Okay. How do you receive your funding?
I do fundraising all the time. I do a fundraiser once a month. Now, Mulcahy's in Wantor.
Yeah.
He's a great man.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Harmony for Hope concert every February. And this past one that we had, over 600 people showed up for it. And we raised over $60,000.
That's great.
And that was a shot in the arm. And now I have another friend of mine he's got 1,300 employees, and he owns Renew. It's a restoration company, and it's in Lindenhurst. And during the pandemic, when it really was hitting hard, he heard from his secretary that we were having trouble financially. Mm-hmm. So he calls me on the phone. It's Mike Vandenberg was his name. He says, Tim, I understand you got having a little bit of trouble. I said, yes, we are. He goes, do me a favor, come to my office. So I go to his office, and he hands me a check for $45,000.
Wow, that's great.
It's a really good shot in the arm.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And he's done three fundraisers for me.
That's fantastic.
If people want to donate, you were talking about people donating wedding dresses and whatnot. Mm-hmm. How can they contact you, or where can they drop off these dresses or
yeah, they can go on the website, and that's amtchildrenofhope.com, amtchildrenofhope.com, and they can see all the different things that can be done there.
Do you also announce when there's going to be a funeral?
Yes.
Also on the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have, as I say, I'm burying a little baby
this Sunday?
This Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah. And she lived for 4 days and died, and Mom disappeared. So we took custody of the baby.
And where did you find, where did they find
that?
It?
Was Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan.
Okay, so Mom dropped the baby off.
No, she gave birth there.
Oh.
And baby lived
mm-hmm.
in ICU, and Mom just disappeared. and we couldn't find her.
Okay.
So, but I had to wait the 90-day period because we have to send registered letters to the mother or the known address. And if they come back, then that's considered completely legitimate for me to get the public administrator to give me the custody of the child.
I know you said about 95% of the mothers usually never return.
Yeah.
For the 5 or so percent that do, have you ever spoken to them?
Yes.
And what's that conversation like?
Well, we got them into mother-child programs and teach them how to care for the baby. And, we even put several birth mothers in apartments.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you need a pretty large operating budget.
Yeah.
So how much money do you typically try to raise a year?
$500,000.
Okay. And so again, we'll put the link on the website, our website and our soon to be Instagram page. And we'll make sure that we, try to push out as much as possible to get you guys, the funding that you need. $500,000. That's a significant amount of money, but I think all the work that you're doing is of course well worth it.
Yeah. To bury a baby, it's $2,500 to bury a baby. Now we also have at Holyrood Cemetery, I have an island there called the Island of Hope, and that's where the babies are buried. And I had to buy a second island. Now the second island I bought, I was going to be able to bury over 200 babies in that second island. And I bought it just before 9/11 happened. And I had not put any babies in it. I had the 200 deeds, but I did not put anything in there. When Rockville Center Diocese called and had Holyrood called me and asked me if I could please give back the island, the second island that I bought. I said, what do you want them back? I said, I really need them. He goes, we want to bury all the 9/11 victims in a memorial right in the center of Holyrood, off Old Country Road. And I said, absolutely. Yeah. I gave him back. And what they did is they gave me the alleyway next to St. Bridget's Church. We have the south side of St. Bridget's Church ordered by the hospital, by the cemetery. So that's where I bury the babies right now.
Do you have enough space?
I just bought last week another 20 plots, and I put 2 babies in each plot.
So the churches, they don't donate the land for that type of? No. I guess because they have to make their money too. I guess to operate, right?
Keep
sense.
The operation.
Yeah. Makes sense. So you've experienced some really traumatic incidents in your career.
Yeah.
Part of the podcast is we talk about these incidents and the effects that it has on someone.
Yeah. The most traumatic one to me was it was up in Glen Cove when somebody found a woman's head in a garbage can. And it took good 20 men to scour all through the area to try to collect all of the parts of this woman's body, which we did. The only thing we could not find, when I say about the head, we knew the head was missing, and we could not find it. And we were looking around and kept looking, and a week or two goes by. It's just about 2 weeks, when a highway patrol officer pulls a man over in a pickup truck that had a taillight out. And he gets out of the pickup truck, and he talks to the cop and says, "You got me." He goes, "What do you mean you got me? You got me." And he says, "It's in the back." So in a bowling bag in the back of the pickup truck was this woman's head. You know what he was doing with it? Having sex with it.
I was going to say, I hope not bowling.
And so he got arrested and found only because of a taillight.
Yeah, well, that tends to happen a lot, actually. The smallest of crimes lead to some of the biggest arrests.
At the medical examiner's office, we had a table like this, and we had a white sheet, a white paper sheet over it. and we drew the body out, and the head was missing, and we that was what we were waiting to possibly have. And
Yeah.
it was, the trundles that they have, and the wheeled in at the refrigerators. So we finally put the head there and took care of it. And then they went through DNA to try to identify who the woman was.
Mm-hmm. It's a wild story.
Yeah.
So all these incidents, how do you as an individual, how do you deal with this psychologically, mentally? How do you recover from incidents like these?
I go to the beach and I'll sit in the sand and I'll scream and kick. I'm serious.
No, I believe you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it releases the stress on that. Then I go down to Robert Moses and I try to count how many deer I can see at the time. On the average, I usually see around 10 deers running around. That's a good spot to go. You go over the bridge and you can see them all by the tower.
Years ago, the mental health aspect of being a first responder was never talked about, right? Yeah. It was shunned. Even until this day, it still has taboo surrounding it. I know a lot of departments are doing all they can now, or at least I hope they are doing all they can to really work with their men and women to try to curtail whatever side effects come from what we see on a daily basis. Yeah. So as the president of your organization and dealing with a lot of the other AMTs that you work with, how do you cross that bridge?
We have counselors, and Dr. Ray Shelton was an AMT that worked with me, and he went back and became a doctor, a psychiatrist, and he works here at the police academy. Mm-hmm. He's now retired, but he still does counseling. So if anybody needs to talk to him, he'll call, including myself.
Yeah,
I went and talked with him. I was afraid that I was going to become an alcoholic, and so we discussed and go to AA meetings and try to work out those type of things that happen.
What advice do you have so in EMS, it's very unique in the fact that you can have someone in high school turns 18, gets an EMT card, and rides an ambulance.
Right.
Usually for police officers and
21.
Other positions, you have to be older. You have an EMT who's brand new, just 18, and responding to some of these incidents. And I know when I volunteered, there were some younger EMTs that sometimes you would see something and they weren't prepared for it.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give younger EMTs, younger EMS providers, first responders in general, in dealing with things that are going to be an eventuality for them? Like, you're going to see things that's going to affect you if this is your chosen profession.
Talk about it. You have to talk about it, and let your emotions and your feelings come out. With me, as I said, you heard me tell the stories about having God in my spirit, and I go to church every week, and I'm an EM in church, and I hand out communion, and that helps me out a lot. And when I have a funeral for a baby, I'm just surprised at how many people show up. Just to witness.
I'm not surprised by that. I think when you pull at the heartstrings of people, and especially a young, innocent baby, I'm not surprised that many people show up.
Yeah.
I'm actually more surprised that more people don't show up.
Yeah. As I said, St. Patrick's Cathedral was the largest I ever had.
Yeah.
Over 3,000 people.
Yeah, that's wild.
In the church.
Yeah. 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 It's a lot of people.
And the New York City had the horses all out in front, and the motorcycles were packed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a good feeling to see that many people for two little babies.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Matthew.
So what's next for you?
What do you mean? I'm going to do this
you
till
tell
I
me. Die. Do you plan on retiring anytime soon?
No.
You're gonna keep doing this until
yeah.
Till the Lord.
I'm lucky enough that the Commissioner Pat Ryder, he gives me the things I need, and at the same time I'm giving him things he needs. He comes to all of my events.
I'm sure he does.
He was at Mulcahy's for the Harmony for Hope. He stayed there the whole time.
Yeah.
5-6 hours.
Yeah, Pat's a great guy.
He helped clean up.
Yeah, he's a fantastic person. He comes to all of our events as well, and we'll be interviewing him very shortly.
Yeah.
And he's a genuine person.
Yeah.
And he truly
He's
cares.
a cop's cop.
Yeah, he really is.
Cop's boss, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, now, right?
Yeah.
Is there any last words you want to say?
If you're in trouble, you know somebody that's out there as medical personnel, talk to the person and let's get them in a better way to give birth and keep the babies alive. I don't want to have to bury babies. And on a last note is I told you that I had buried 6 babies all at the same time. And we had 6 little caskets. And then we have this new baby, Eugenia, and we're burying her Saturday at 9:30. And then May, I'm taking legal custody at North Shore LIJ of 6 babies that were abandoned during COVID. And back then, they wouldn't let, they put the babies in the morgue, and then moms disappear and we can't find them. So I have another group of 6 babies that I'll be burying in May.
You're going to bury all of them together?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm waiting for. I have custody of 4 of them right now. I'm waiting for the rest of the 90-day period on 2 other ones.
Do you have a date set yet for when that burial will be?
It'll be on a Saturday.
Okay.
But it'll be probably middle late May, because we want to try to do it before colleges get out and people are not around.
Okay.
I have one more question for you. What's the significance to you in naming all of the babies?
The person who finds the baby is the one that I have them name. But they have to have identity. And the last name is, all the babies are Hope. The last name is Hope. And the first name is if you found a baby, and to help you as an EM and a police medic or whatever fire department you belong to, you get to name that baby. And also I make sure that you're there at the funeral, and you'll be one of the pallbearers that take care of it.
Wow. It's pretty intense. What we do is at the end of the podcast, sometimes we ask our guests if they had brought anything with them to share with the viewers and with the podcast itself. Did you bring anything with you today to showcase? No, that's fine. We'll edit that part out anyway. So, all right. So
if you want it, I'll go get it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Is it in your car?
No.
Oh, no, it's fine. We show it on camera sometimes, but you want to wrap it up? Do you have any other questions?
I'm pretty good. I mean, very powerful.
Yeah, this is a really, really powerful episode for sure. How are we looking on time so far?
About 48 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's usually what we aim for.
About 48 minutes.
Yeah, anywhere between 45 to 60, usually at most.
Yeah.
Because after that, people start, pay attention. I'm sure, as you're aware.
Yeah.
You
don't have to tape it, but what I had was during the pandemic, serious when it was the first year of the pandemic. I got a phone call.
Wait, let's put this on. Okay.
And you can edit whatever you want. So I get a phone call, and I was working with a young girl up in Watertown. It's on the Canadian border. And I told her, listen, you got to give me time. If you going into labor, you feel some contractions, get a hold of me right away, because it's going to take me 8 hours to get to you. And so she called plenty of time. I got in a car, drove to Watertown, went to her apartment, and delivered her baby in the back bedroom. And because she didn't want to go to the hospital. I don't understand why, but many of them don't want to go to a hospital. So I deliver the baby, and I check her out. She's doing okay. The bleeding had subsided somewhat. And I said, listen, I really want you to go. And she said, I'm not going to the hospital. I said, well, I have to take the baby to the hospital. And this is where I really couldn't believe what I was seeing. I put her in the car seat in the back, and I go to the emergency room. I couldn't get in the emergency room. There was so many people waiting in their cars to be seen, because of the pandemic. And then on top of that, I went to the lobby thinking I'll go into the lobby and go up to the, and drop the baby off upstairs in OBGYN. And I couldn't get in the lobby. They removed all the furniture and they had 16 beds in the lobby and down hallways all over because nobody could do anything.
Yeah.
And so I asked the security guard, can you please have a doctor or a nurse come down? I just delivered this baby and the baby needs to be seen. And the doctor and a nurse came down and they examined the baby in the back of my car.
Oh, jeez.
I have a Ford Explorer.
Yeah.
I lay that. Yeah. And then I went back to the house and I said, listen, I really still am uncomfortable. I'm going to examine you one more time. And I said, then I want you to do is I'll stay here, sleep on the couch, and you go into the bedroom. You got to get some sleep. And she says, I'd like you to do that. So I called my wife and I said, listen, honey, I'm not coming home tonight. I'm going to be sleeping with another woman. You know what she said to me? Don't stay up too late.
Earlier in the episode, you mentioned something along the lines of a safe house.
Yes, I have a safe house.
What exactly is that?
It's a place where I bring birth mothers that we can keep overnight or even up to 2 weeks if necessary. And there's a kitchen, bathroom. It's a whole house, lower level. It's a large apartment. Mm-hmm. And that's where I have the mothers stay.
So after they've given birth?
Yeah, I've delivered, I want to say at least 6 babies in the safe house. Wow. In the back bedroom.
So they've given birth, or you've given birth there at the actual safe house, and you allow them to stay there for a week or two to just recuperate.
Until we find a place for them to go.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're homeless. I've had several of them. Mm-hmm. And I have Mama's House. That's a women's shelter that holds six mothers and babies. And so Mama's House will take it, or the Life Center. Life Center is another place I use all the time. Wow. And that's where the babies and the mothers go.
A lot of moving pieces to your operation.
Yeah, never thought.
Yeah, a ton of moving pieces. And I think that's, again, just another reason why people who are listening to this episode need to donate. Yeah. $1, $2, $1,000, $10,000, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. They got to reach out to you guys and they got to donate.
I sold the Brooklyn Bridge, you know.
I'm sure you did.
I did.
Yeah?
Yeah. I had 6. What I did was I had an artist make up the Brooklyn Bridge in chrome wiring. And then I got the Department of Transportation in New York, a friend of mine that I knew. I said, can you get me 12-inch sections of the Brooklyn Bridge cabling? Yeah, sure, Tim. No problem. Cut it up, handed me 12 pieces, and I put them underneath there. And I sold them for over $2,000 a piece. That's actually a really cool piece of memorabilia to have. If you're a history person or it's a New York City buff, that's a great. It was fantastic. Yeah, let's keep doing. Let's keep cutting up more of the bridge. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's great. Well, Tim, listen, this has been a phenomenal episode. A very informative episode. I hope that if anyone is listening, and again, like you said earlier, if they know of anyone that's struggling, or if they're soon to be mother and they're scared, now they know that they can show up to any police, fire, or medical facility, drop off the baby within usually 30 days or upwards of more. If it was in Nebraska, is that where it was? The state that has the longest. Oh yeah, Nebraska. 30 days or more. No questions asked. Correct. Please do that. I'd say 99% of the time, the babies are relinquished within the first 24 hours. Yeah. Yeah. So don't let your child die on the, wherever. Just that's right. Drop them off, at one of those locations, and they'll be taken care of. Mm-hmm. So, and you're the reason why. So thank you. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. We truly, truly appreciate it. This has been another phenomenal episode of The Muster Room. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next one.